Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in whatever part of the world you are. Welcome to the Bridge Researchers. Today we are going to talk about the scientific method in Conscientiology with Alexandre Zaslavsky, and then we are going to introduce him very soon. So it's a pleasure again to be with you. My name is Marcelo Pires. I am a volunteer from ISIC. And let's talk a little bit about what it is the Bridge Researchers. Okay, the Bridge Researchers is one of the Bridge project events that ISIC uh, promotes. So this project has been created to bring together conscientiology researchers from all over the world to facilitate knowledge exchange and sharing of interassistantial experience. So this is a free event. We do it online uh, on Sundays, where a speaker presents a topic of self-research. And then for whoever is new, who we are. ISIC is the Interassistantial Service for the Internationalization of Conscientiology. It's a non-profit organization ran by volunteers formerly within the ICCC, International Conscientiology Cosmoethical Community. And ISIC has the status of a pre-consciential-centric institution, or a pre-CI, like we call it. And our motto is open doors and building bridges. So that's exactly our idea. We want to interconnect people all over the world. And I would like now to introduce Mr. Alexandre Zaslavsky. Welcome, Alexandre.
Hello, Marcelo. Thank you.
So before we start with the presentation, I'd like to present Alexandre formally. Alexandre is a high school philosophy teacher. He has a PhD in philosophy in education, and he is the coordinator of the Interscientific Council of UNICIN. He is also the editor of the Journal of Interparadigmas and a co-author of the book Existential Inversion, and author of several articles and entries of the Encyclopedia of Conscientiology. So, Alexandre, it's a pleasure to have you with us. And, well, I would say that feel at home, and then simply the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, hello, everyone. I'd like to thank Isaac for this invitation. It's my pleasure to be here with you, sharing some parts of research I've been doing for some years now. So let's get to it. This is the principle of disbelief. It's one of perhaps the main principle of conscientiology. And it says, do not believe in anything, not even in what is informed here. Experiment, have your own experiences. So this is a sort of prophylaxis. And considering we're dealing with transcendent topics such as parapsychism, it's very important not to believe, but to experiment, to have and value your own experiences, because all of us have many experiences and we should value them. Okay, then. So I'll move on here with my topic today. It is the topic is scientific method in conscientiology, and why this topic? Because conscientiology is a proposal of a new science, and science is defined by their method. So one should ask, like I ask myself, well, if conscientiology is a science, well, then what is its method? So that's the topic today. Well, the scientific method is the main trait of science. It is the main difference to religion and art. If we consider these three here, like three kinds of knowledge, three big fields of culture, Science is the one which has a method, like a main part of it. And religion and art, so to speak, generally speaking, although they use techniques and methods, some sort of, it's not a main trait. So they have other traits. So science is mainly about scientific method because the method is the thing that allows science to, to be more, to found better their knowledge. So that's the one of the basic notions here. Well, conscientiology proposes a multidimensional science, including parapsychic experiences. So, conscientiology is a proposal of a new kind of science, but also a new kind of science because, science, the historical development of science is mainly focused on what is material, what's made of matter, of atoms. And conscientiology includes those experiences which transcend the intraphysic dimension, our physical body, which we call generally parapsychic experiences, such as energetic perceptions, out of body experiences, and so many others. So the interesting thing is that conscientiology includes those experiences and still intends to be a science, different than other areas such as religion and art. Often they include parapsychic experiences, but they don't mean to be a science.
And Alexandre, let me make a question on this and connecting. You mentioned in the beginning about the principle of disbelief. That's a principle that we follow exactly to guarantee that this becomes and continues to be a science. And then for someone that's new, sometimes parapsychic experience, they look like something from a TV show or things like that. What will be your recommendations to make the experimentation a reality for these people? What kind of tests or techniques would you recommend for them to try?
Well, parapsychism is a human faculty, and even like every we could perhaps say every living being theoretically has parapsychism. So it's a natural faculty of every one of us. So everybody has parapsychic experiences, some sort of parapsychic experiences. The thing is to learn to identify them in our daily life and pay attention to them, to value them, but at the same time, without rushing into conclusions. So, for instance, what does religion do? Well, let's say, the religious person has some sort of parapsychic experience, but very quickly concludes that it's a sort of religious thing. Like, oh, this is God inspiring me. This is God. This is a saint I worship, and so forth. So, conscientiology calls attention to those experiences we all have, but without getting, mystical about it. Just pay attention to what happens in your daily life. For example, do you have a hinge in your daily life, like this intuition, which proves itself worthy? And do you feel like how's the energy of the environment you get into? Is it good? Is it bad? Why so? Why do you think that? So all that is parapsychism. It's uh, information that don't come from the senses, but from our holosoma, we'll say, like the all of our bodies. But conscientiology has a really a technology to do that, like techniques such as the vibrational state and energetic assimilation. So if you that are watching this, you have those experiences. Conscientiology offers a lot of techniques and procedures and concepts, theories that help to understand and to develop them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So what's next here? Well, I was saying that to a multidimensional science, we'll need a different kind of scientific method. It doesn't only like a conventional materialistic method won't be enough. Like it's not. Otherwise, parapsychology, for instance, would have already solved that. Will have already proven the existence of the objective existence of parapsychic phenomena and so on. But it seems that it didn't. So we in conscientiology, we what we say that first things first, let's value our own parapsychic experiences and treat them systematically, methodically. So it's not our main goal to prove objectively the existence of such phenomena, but to realize what the ones we have and what's their importance to our evolutionary process. Like how are those phenomena helping me, or those experiences helping me to evolve and become a better person, a better consciousness? That's our point. And only after that we will try to prove their existence, but that's not our first priority. So there can be a scientific method in conscientiology without compromising with physicalist assumptions of the conventional scientific paradigm. I'm saying this to, like a warrant or something, that I'm not trying to propose here a new conventional method, a statistical method or some sort of physicalist method in order to prove those phenomena, like I was just saying. No, it's a first-person method. So since conscientiology proposes a new paradigm, this scientific method is also, of course, within this new paradigm. So it's some sort of new paradigm of scientific method as well. So it's not about trying to adjust conscientiology to the mainstream science, not that, but to value what's new in conscientiology as a scientific novelty. What's new in conscientiology, and propose to build an adequate scientific method to it. That's the point. Well, so now I'm beginning to. I will explain a little bit about that principle we mentioned before, the principle of disbelief, because this principle, it will lead to the scientific method of conscientiology. So personal experience, what's that? So personal experience is the opposite of belief. So if I have personal experience of something, I don't need to believe in that. It's not necessary because I've seen it. So it's not a matter, for instance, out-of-body experience. Do I believe in it? No, it's not a matter of belief because I had out-of-body experiences myself. I had that personal experience. So belief and personal experience, they are they're opposite because they exclude one another. It happens in the first person or from the participant's perspective. So it's this is a feature of personal experience. It's always in the first person. One can have the other's like personal experience, or to experience something in the place of another person. It doesn't make any sense. So it's always first person, or that is from the participant's perspective. It enables acquiring personal knowledge, mainly about one's personal development. Well, I'm not saying that personal experience substitutes everything, like the scientific material, materialistic scientific knowledge. It's not that, but personal experience, it's really important to the knowledge about personal development, or the personal knowledge about oneself. So that's the main focus of personal experience. For example, the knowledge about personal traits. What are my traits? Like strong traits, weak traits, or absent traits. We have these three kinds of traits we study in conscientiology. What are my priorities, for example? What should be my priorities? And what are my overcomings? Like what I have already overcame in this life. What kind of weak traits I overcame, and difficult situations in my life. So this kind of personal knowledge is very important in conscientiology. We attach it to self-research, another very important concept in conscientiology. So when we're talking about personal experiences as the opposite of belief, it doesn't mean that we must have personal experience of everything. No, we choose the experience we should have in order to evolve. What is more important, but then we will get into self-experimentation, which is the next topic. So let's go there. Well, personal parapsychic experience. Well, it's a kind of personal experience, but it goes a little further, because personal experience means any experience we have in our lives. It's a personal experience, but parapsychic, it's a bit different. So parapsychic experience transcends the physical body and physical dimension. It involves the de-alignment of the vehicles of consciousness and the interaction with extraphysical consciousnesses. So it is also experience. One can't deny that. If one has this kind of experience, it happened. It's not like an illusion. Well, at least at first, okay? So when we study conscientiology, we learn to differentiate, to distinguish between what's an experience and for example, is a dream. When we are asleep, this is a topic to study. What's the difference between an actual out-of-body experience and a dream that happens inside the brain, and the out-of-body experience, by definition, happens outside the brain. So of course, one can confuse a parapsychic experience to a dream, for example, or to a daydream or something like that. But we study in order to distinguish and to understand the differences between them. So, for example, energetic coupling, when the energy of two people, two persons, they mix and they blend. So it's possible to read information, to understand information that are there in this field we call coupling. The other one is another is projections of the consciousness, which is the same that out-of-body experiences, and also retrocognition, for example, like to remember something that happened in a past life. So this is another kind of parapsychic experience, which raises curiosity from a lot of people. Like everyone would like to perhaps to know what they did in their past lives and so on. So it's not exactly like that. It doesn't happen exactly like that, but it happens. Not a few people, more than a few people have retrocognitions, and many times they are solid. They are coherent. They have this a logical sequence, and one can really identify at some point even a name, for example. And so, Marcelo.
So we have one question here from Lydia Decker. Hi guys, Alexandre, can you differentiate personal experience from self-experimentation?
Yes, I can, and I will do that. But I will briefly, summarize. Personal experience is mainly passive. Personal experience is whatever happened to us when we are awake. Intraphysically or astrophysically, we are vigil. We are awake. So personal experiences are happening with us all the time. But a self-experiment is something that we aim for. We're seeking that. So we do intentionally. That's a self-experiment. It's an experience we intentionally provoke. So so one is passive and the other is active, basically. But I'll get more into that.
Thank you, Alexandre.
All right. Well, an experiment is a controlled experience. So it's a simple, definition, a simple difference. An experiment is a controlled experience. Experience is not controlled, like I just said. Experience happens all the time. The moment we open our eyes when we wake up, experiences happen. How do I feel? What happens to me in the morning? And the people I meet, all that are experiences all the time. But an experiment is controlled. Not only like in conventional science, it is a controlled experience. But here, I bring an example of our daily life, which can be considered an experiment, a self-experiment, but very, usual one. When you try new food and monitor your reactions. I think all of us did that or do that. When you try new food, you monitor. Do I like it? Do I dislike it? How are the sensations? Like what's the taste really? Does it resemble something else like I have already eaten? And so forth. So this is some sort of self-experimentation. Everybody does that. Everybody. And I think when we are kids, this is even stronger because since we don't have much experience, new food sometimes is challenging. Like, wow, if I don't eat, what will happen if I don't like it? Will I feel sick, for example? What will happen? I was afraid of trying new food when I was a child and this kind of thing. But it's a simple example of a self-experiment, but very usual one. Just to understand the concept, the notion. A scientific experiment uses a scientific method. So if it is a scientific experiment, is because it uses a scientific method. One thing is linked to the other. For example, repeating it many times, registering it cautiously, and inferring conclusions from the data, establishing cause-effect relations. This is a summary, very simple summary of the experimental method. And we can adapt it to conscientiology, of course, respecting the differences, but we can adapt it in self-experimentation, as I'll try to show you. So this is a method, a sequence of steps in order to acquire knowledge at the end, because it's a scientific method and not other kind of method, scientific method. So it aims to establish cause-effect relation. What is that? Some effect has a specific cause. What's the cause of this effect? This is the goal of experimental method. And also in conscientiology, in a way. Of course, our object of study here in conscientiology is not matter, is consciousness. So it has to be adapted to other objects. More than that, is multidimensional consciousness, integral consciousness, I think I can say. Well, self-experiment is an experiment with oneself. Well, simply put, is that. Even behavioral psychology, conventional psychology, uses self-experimentation sometimes as a therapeutic procedure. For example, testing one's reactions in a stressful situation in order to challenge beliefs. It is self-experimentation, but with therapeutic goals, not scientific goals. In this case, it has this therapeutic goals that is a practical goal. So the person has this belief, for example, I'm not able to do such and such thing. It's a belief. But then I'll go there and try to do it like an experiment. I don't know if I will make it or not, but it's a self-experiment. And instead of believing that, I will check that out. I will test it, if it's true or not. Let the reality tell me what's true and what's not. So that's challenging a belief. That's quite similar to some self-experimentation we do in conscientiology, that therapeutic procedure. But in conscientiology, it has scientific goal, not only therapeutic, because the therapeutic gathers with the scientific goal. A self-experiment can include the holosoma and the extra-physical dimensions through parapsychism. So if in, for example, psychology, it's done a self-experimentation, but there it's only at stake the physical body, of course, the physical mind, the physical body, the physical dimension, because psychology is a conventional science. It assumes the physical reality only. But in conscientiology, we can include the holosoma. That means all bodies we have: physical, energetic, emotional, and mental. Energosoma, psychosoma, mental soma, and soma. The four basic vehicles, the four vehicles which we work with, which we know, they can and they are included in self-experimentation. Also, the extra physical dimensions, because we interact using our bioenergies with other dimensions beyond the physical dimension. For example, with extra physical consciousnesses and also energies which are not physical, we can have self-experimentation and intentional self-experimentation. Of course, it's intentional with that through parapsychism. So parapsychism is the faculty which allow us to do such self-experimentation. Well, conscientiological self-experiment, what's that? Conscientiology allows the extrapolation of self-experimentation to the extra-physical. So all that can be summarized that on this extrapolation. Self-experimentation goes and includes the extra-physical. The self-researcher does conscientiological self-experimentation. The self-research, like one of the essential concepts in conscientiology, is linked also. It is bound with self-experimentation, because what the self-experimentation is the first, like I will say, like I will explain later, but it is the basic method for conscientiological knowledge. So self-research needs to use self-experimentation somehow. It is the intentional seeking of multidimensional experiences in order to recycle and evolve. So this is a summary of this, what's conscientiological self-experiment. When one mobilizes, when one moves their personal energies in order to expand them and interact with other dimensions, that is multidimensional realities. So, and when we expand our energies and do such interactions, we acquire more information about ourselves. For example, how am I right now? How's my health, like consciential health? What should I improve at this point? So this kind of information is qualified with multidimensional experiences, because outside the physical body, we are much more sensitive. We are much more, open to experiences. Well, so now I'm moving on a little bit more to this systematic experimentation in conscientiology. A laboratory is a controlled environment where experiments are done. So this is a basic, very simple concept. It applies to all laboratories in principle. So that's what a laboratory is. It is a controlled environment. Why is that? Because inside the laboratory, it's possible to know better what's the cause and what's the effect, because the variables, they are controlled. For example, on a chemistry lab, for example, the temperature is controlled, the light is controlled, and the air could be controlled. What's in the atmosphere could be controlled also. So if we know the variables, what's a variable there, the experiment gets more accurate. It gets more useful. So it's more informative because the environment is controlled. So that's the definition of a laboratory. And in conscientiology, we have laboratories in this same sense, like a building, a space, a physical space that work as laboratory. So in the conscientiological camp, many buildings are conscientiological laboratories. So we have some conscientiological camp in Brazil, and there we have buildings like houses where laboratories work, individual laboratories. So the person goes there alone and they do an experiment there, a self-experiment there, using the intraphysical space, because those intraphysical spaces are charged with energies concerning their topics. That's why they optimize self-experiments. So I'll show here, I have a picture of a campus we have here in Foz do Iguaçu. And you can see those houses in a circle. All of them are laboratories. And each one of them has a topic. For example, vibrational state, Thousand, thoughts, sentiments, and energies. It's one topic to experiment. And many others, retrocognitions, paragenetics, Penta technique, the personal energetic task technique, it's Penta, and so forth. So those are conscientiological laboratories where experimentation is done, but conscientiological experimentation, not conventional. It's not like a chemistry lab, because the object is not material. The object is the consciousness. It's an immaterial reality. But nevertheless, experiments can be done like that. Well, but then we have a different concept. It's important to distinguish those. Consciential laboratory, it's different. So a consciousness seeking self-evolution builds a laboratory within herself, or even becomes an evolutionary laboratory. So the energetic environment of the consciousness becomes a moving laboratory. So when one goes, for example, here in CEAEC, in Foz do Iguaçu, to one of those laboratories, the energies in the physical environment, they help to to make a better experiment. Okay, that's a technique, using the physical environment as assistance. But in fact, we all will form a consciential laboratory eventually, because we shouldn't depend on an intraphysical space in order to make experiments, self-experimentation. Because even a person who is there inside the laboratory, physical laboratory, actually is doing an experiment on their consciential laboratory, actually. So the consciential laboratory is the main thing. But we value, of course, those physical, intraphysical laboratories as didactic tools, pedagogical tools. But the goal is to form a consciential laboratory. So the ideal is making experiments everywhere I go. Like me as a consciousness, I become a moving laboratory. So I can do self-experimentation in in myself as a consciousness, in my energies, in my holosoma, in the dimensions I interact with. So all this, complex of phenomena that I am is a consciential laboratory, or can become a consciential laboratory, or an evolutionary laboratory, like a space where evolution is being experimented, tested. Like how do I evolve better and faster? And so these are the basic questions to experiment. We can talk about types of self-experiments, basically two, but they can be mixed. So the first one is exploratory self-experimentation, where the researcher monitors everything that happens during the self-experiment. It doesn't have a defined variable, a defined focus. The focus is opened to every variable or everything that may happen during the self-experiment. For example, if I am here in my office and I exteriorize energy, I want to know what will I feel. So I don't know what will I feel. It's not defined. So it's an exploratory self-experiment, because I provoke an experience of exteriorizing energies, but I am monitoring the consequences of that. What will I feel? So this is an exploratory self-experiment. So using energies, it brings a lot of exploratory self-experimentation, going to places like a restaurant, visiting the family, visiting friends, all of that can be exploratory self-experimentation. Another type of self-experiment is the directed. So the researcher monitors a defined variable during the self-experiment. So I want to know exactly, for example, how will my cardio chakra, how will it behave when I go to when I visit some friend? I want to know what will I feel in my cardio chakra. So this is a directed self-experiment, because my attention is focused in one thing. Could be two, okay, but the thing is, a directed self-experiment has a defined variable. It's focused. And the exploratory self-experiment is not focused. The focus is opened. It wants to capture anything that can be meaningful to that experiment. But the directed, no, it will only pay attention to what's priority there. But we often mix both types, but it's more difficult to do that because the attention needs to be more, used to do it. The researcher monitors a defined variable, like a directed self-experiment, and also stays open to new variables that is doing both at the same time. So if I am investigating some question I want to answer in a self-experiment, I have already a directed self-experiment to do. But I don't close myself totally to other variables that may occur. So probably the mixed type is the more usual when one develops this skill to do self-experimentation, probably. But it's more initially is important to differentiate exploratory and directed, to know the difference and to be and be able to do one or the other, and so mix both when one can do one or the other. I'll bring some examples now. So the vibrational state, probably the more basic technique in conscientiology, because to be able to install the vibrational state and use it brings many other experiences, parapsychic experiences, and all sort of different information that are useful to one's evolutionary process. So, for example, monitoring the will, because the vibrational state is done by the will, using the will, the pure will. So, how strong is my will as a definite force? How strong is it? Can I install the vibrational state everywhere, whenever I want? How's that? For example, in some places, like if I go downtown, let's imagine that. How much will I have to concentrate my will in order to install vibrational state? That's a self-experiment. That is a self-experiment. And the will is the variable. Okay, so that's different than when I am in my office or in my house, my home. Probably the vibrational state will install much easier because it's full of my energies. It's where I'm used to be. So the will is a variable to do a self-experiment with the vibrational state. Also with the vibrational state, the chakras. I can install the vibrational states and then monitor the chakras. So when I do the vibrational state, which chakra gets more intense, gets more activated? Which one? And is it a good activation, like open, or is it bad activation, let's say, because it's blocked and it's kind of hurting a little bit? So this is some sort of self-experiment as well, because I'm focusing on a variable. It is a directed self-experiment. The speed of the vibrational state, I can also do a self-experiment with that. The effects of the vibrational state, if I'm interested in the effects of it, it's a exploratory self-experiment because I install it and then monitor the effects, whatever they are. So it's opened, then it's an exploratory self-experiment. Weak traits, strong traits, the traits of consciousness, our inner tendencies, they can be studied in self-experiments, and they can also be recycled, including in self-experiments. Weak traits, when do my weak traits they appear? When? How do they appear? Very strong or not? With everyone or just some people? And why they happen? Let's say, for example, that I am shy. That's a weak trait I have. I am shy. So when am I shy? All the time, like with my friends, I am shy, or when I do like an exposition of myself, public exposition. So when does that happen? How does it happen? This shyness, it's the same everywhere or it's different? Why does it happen? So all of that can be self experiments when I focus during my personal experience in order to get some knowledge. And strong traits also can be experimented. What they are, how they work. Usually, perhaps people are more interested in their weak traits because the weak traits, they are trouble for us. They nobody likes. Let's say that, nobody appreciates really their weak traits, but they are important to our evolutionary process. But they are they're not nice, to feel them. But the strong traits, they are good to feel, but we have some obstacles, sometimes even cultural obstacles, to value those strong traits and really understand them. What are my strong traits? How do they work? When do they work better? And another example is the orthothosin. It's the thosins. The thosine, it's a very important concept in conscientiology too. It's the manifestation of consciousness. It happens through thoughts, sentiments, and energies. And ortho means like straight, means something which goes correctly, let's say that. So the orthothosins are the healthy and assistential thosins we have. Those are very important, very, very important to identify. What orthothosins I have? When do they happen? How do they happen? Etc. So all that are examples of self-experiments, but think that our life is made of experiences. So in principle, we can do self-experimentation with virtually anything, everything that happens with us. In a way, we can turn it into a self-experiment in a way. So fixing some variable, paying attention, what is happening, how am I interfering in that, how am I behaving with that? So the whole experience, daily life experience, gradually becomes self-experimentation. That's it. Well, the method of self-experimentation could be described such as planning the self-experiment, making the self-experiment, registering, accumulating self-experiments, like repeating self-experiments, comparing self-experiments, and inferring results. So this sequence of steps could be described as the self-experimentation method per se. That results, those results are actually the knowledge we acquire with self-experimentation. So self-experimentation is the basic scientific method in conscientiology. That's at least what I am proposing, but it seems that other researchers agree with that the basic method we need to apply, we need to use in conscientiology in order to acquire knowledge is self-experimentation. Everybody, in a way or another, do self-experimentation in conscientiology, but the thing is to systematize it, to describe it better. How does it work? That's what I am bringing here today. So conscientiology in principle brings an indefinite number of new scientific methods to be described. So self-experimentation is only the first one, the more basic one. But the more complex conscientiological knowledge is, the more complex also is the scientific method it uses. So it's a job, I guess, for all of us, many people, to identify and describe or even propose new scientific methods in conscientiology. I think this is the last one. And here are some references in English that will help. This article is in the journal Interparadigmas. It is online. Also, the book Where Does Religion End is a great book. And two books of Valdo Vieira, Projections of the Consciousness and Projectiology. So these are 4 references that can be also studied in relation to this topic. And this is it, I think, now.
Thank you, Alexandre. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to invite the audience to send questions about the subject. Okay, I think that we have this a comment here from Liliana, Alexandre. Conscientiology is all about self-research, self-experimentation, and evolution of each consciential principle through them.
Yes, exactly. Good summary. Yes, self-research, self-experimentation, and evolution. The 3 go together. They go together, of each consciential principle through them. Exactly. It's a good way to summarize conscientiology. Agree.
And oops. And Alexandre, I would like to make you a question. Okay, first, and then when you talk about self-experimentation, there is one discipline that's very important, because you're talking about not only planning and making the experiment, but the proper registering of this experiment, so you can compare, analyze, and get conclusions. Can you talk a little bit more about the notes and these personal laboratory notes that people can introduce in their routines?
Yes, sure. Very good point. It's important to register the experimentation very objectively. Sometimes the researchers, they develop their own instruments to register. For example, a form which you can name the experiment and summarize what happened in the experiment, and only in the third place to note some hypotheses of what could the experiment mean. So there are some principles to that. Let's say, for example, an objective register, you try to separate what's the description and what's an interpretation. Don't mix them. Other principle is the immediate character of it. So the quick, let's say, the faster you register, the better. For example, if I wake up during the night after an out of body experience, it's always better to take immediate notes and not to delay the registering, because since parapsychic experience, they are kind of subtle. There's a tendency to forget the details if you delay. Like, oh, I don't want to get up right now, so I'll do it later. And the worst scenario is that one really forgets all the experience. It's very bad. I hope it doesn't happen with any of you. You
Well,
really
it
lose
happened
this
with me this morning, okay?
Sorry.
Okay.
So the method, these 2 principles, they are kind of like a technique to take good notes. And when these notes, they accumulate, for example, in diaries, you can use a notebook, for example, or of course you can use the cell phone and the computer and, well, so on. But when they accumulate, sometimes we can take conclusions, like good conclusions from them. I think one good example is the energetic, the parapsychic signals. I think it's
Yep.
called energetic
Right.
and parapsychic signals. It's very individual signals we have, but they are not at first identified. So we have, for example, a sensation of a heat in the skin, or you feel like a chill, or some sort of I don't know if I can describe them in English. I think little sensations that happens during the day, like you feel your ear getting warm or something. And it's possible to really identify. At principle, you can identify what does it mean, but you can't rush into these conclusions. You need to wait until the data accumulate. So, like, well, I felt such thing when what I was doing, what I was thinking, and what happened after, what happened after. So these three information, these three, ideas, they will eventually point out what does it mean. So, for example, I feel this dizziness when an extraphysical consciousness comes close to me, comes close to me. I feel dizzy. So it's a conclusion, but it doesn't. If it happened only once, I can't really
Set a
affirm that.
standard or pattern. Yep.
Yeah, it will be premature, to say that. What's that? It needs to accumulate, but the notebooks, the accumulation of this registering, that will allow to take good conclusions. And well, at least there, of course, it's scientific, so we're not absolutely sure, but they work. They really work. After a while, we get to use those signals, and they work in the daily life. They are very useful.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. I have another question here from Liliana. What can you say to people who still think that self-experience is not a synonym of proof of existence of anything?
Well, it depends on what do we mean by proof. If it's a material proof, I agree, it's not, because conscientiology doesn't. It's not our main goal to prove anything. So that's right. Self-experience is not a synonym of proof, but if we consider the personal knowledge, that's the thing, because those people, they don't consider personal knowledge. They are not interested in personal knowledge, like personal about myself as an evolutionary being. Let's just consider this. If we consider this, the personal knowledge is important, then self-experience is proof of one's evolutionary process, at least. But when we introduce also parapsychism and the method to treat the data, it becomes more consistent and gradually proves some things. But at a basic, stance, I agree. If we consider their perspective, like materialistic perspective, is not. So it's a difference of paradigm. But self-experience is not the same as self-experiment. That's a point I'm trying to make, because experience is a very kind of vague word, because experience could be almost anything. But experiment, no. Experiment is specific. Experiment has scientific value, and experience not necessarily.
And then when you mention about self-experiment, you mentioned about a method. You're following a method and in at least some controlled parameters, right?
Right, right. Mhm. Because, for example, when a person wants to start the vibrational state, um, the attention, the way the attention distributes on the energosoma in order to install the vibrational state, it kinds of closes some field. This defines the boundaries of a field. The attention is limited. So it makes possible to do some sort of control, to observe, to monitor what's going on there. It resembles an actual laboratory or a physical laboratory because it is also closed environment, and the interaction of this environment with the exterior is controlled. So when we apply like a bioenergetic technique and really observe and monitor what's going on with us, it is somehow controlled. We can't be totally sure, of course, and I guess even in conventional science they are not totally sure, but we can't control everything, of course, obviously, but it's some sort of controlled. It is controlled, but that's something that this needs to be more developed. How does like the consciential how does it happen, this control in the consciential laboratory? I'm sure it happens.
Thank you. I have a question here from Eliane Voslao, and it's split in two, okay? So bear with me, and then let's start here, and then we'll continue with the next message. What do you think that's more efficient when the person wants to do the paradigm
That's
change, paradigmatic change, for example, from religion to scientific?
well, what's more effective? It's well, scientific could be also materialistic. Okay, so it happens. It often happens that people goes from religious paradigm to a scientific paradigm, though materialistic. But I guess you mean consciential paradigm, like a scientific consciential paradigm. I think I would bet that it is self-experimentation, exactly, because conventional science ignores what's not material. They can only study what is material, and also they ignore the subject as an object of study. So the scientist needs to be more neutral as they can. It's exactly the opposite what we do here in conscientiology, because to study oneself, one the neutrality we try to achieve is very different than the neutrality of a conventional scientist, because the conventional scientist needs to ignore all they are, like emotions, ideas, like a person, an individual person. And self-research in conscientiology is the research of an individual person. But self-experimentation is some sort of, we call it interparadigmatic bridge, like the bridge here. We are at the bridge. So the bridge connects two, territories, separated territories. The bridge connects them. And self-experimentation is as a scientific method, it has enough features to be considered scientific. At least it's expected. But also it preserves the object of conscientiology. So having the features of two different paradigms, it can be a bridge, to help crossing from one paradigm to the other, if we can say that. So installing the vibrational state, knowing their own energies, having out-of-body experiences of the projections of the consciousness, and so on. That's why projectiology was the first specialty of conscientiology that was developed, because it's the basis of it all, of all conscientiology, the practical basis. Otherwise, it could be theoretical, it could be philosophy, for example. So the religious person, or even a scientific but materialistic person, what's more effective for them to change their paradigm is self-experimentation, I'd say.
That's right. And another question, thank you, from Lydia Decker. Self-experimentation, just continue with your list, can be done multidimensionality, correct? Which methodological aspects do you think that are important to be considered when carrying out extraphysical experiments widely projected?
Oh, that's more difficult, because when we are projected, we are much more authentic, and our behavior projected is more difficult to control. So it depends on each person which methodological aspects. But I think the reactions are very important, because the reactions, they are immediate, and they show something that's very how can I say, they are very deep in the consciousness, like very reactions, they are something very, the consciousness is very used to behave like that. So extraphysically, for example, while meeting someone or seeing something, we react. And I think those reactions, they're very useful, because in the intraphysical daily life, the reactions can be kind of disguised, occult in our, because of our manifestation here. But they're very spontaneous. So, for example, in extraphysically, I'm projected and I meet someone that needs help, some sort of help, but for some reason I run away and I don't help them. That's something to think about. Like, why is that? Like, why? Well, first of all, why me? Why did they ask my help? And second, why didn't I offer the help? So there are two things, but it's a reaction. It's a very spontaneous reaction. Like, for example, was I afraid? Was I like ashamed, embarrassed? What did I think that I'm not able to do that help? What happened? So I think reactions could be one methodological aspect. I'm not sure what Ligia means by methodological aspect, but I think it's a variable. Other, I guess, when we are like we succeed on doing something extraphysically, like the opposite of what I just said. When we do some successful help extraphysically projected, which help was that? To whom? And how did I behave? Was I alone? Etc. 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 So the bad reaction and the good reaction, perhaps.
Yeah, and one thing that I would leave as a suggestion is, I think that the extra-physical agenda could help on having a method, because if you can plan what you want to do as an experiment for you before we performing the lucid projection, it can help to define what exactly you are going to test. I'm going to test, for example, a characteristic of my psychosoma, like elasticity, or capacity to cross solid objects, or what kind of experiments I'm going to do, and that I need to repeat because I could, for example, recall what was my experiment completely from the past trials.
No, great, great, great. The properties of the psychosoma, in this case, great,
Could be
good, good
one
example.
idea.
Yeah, elasticity and all that. Yeah, volitation, for example, it's a great goal, to achieve, to experiment volitation. I guess the examples I gave are more like my actual challenges. I think.
Oh, I think that from everybody, Alexandre. Again, we have a question from Eliane. You'll be in two different comments. What is the relation between personal values and self-experimentation? And then it's something I think that, and self-experimentation. I think that will be basically the question here. What's the
Right.
relation between personal values and self-experimentation?
Well, first of all, self-experimentation already challenges personal values, depending on what they are. For example, like you asked before, Eliane, religious values. It's not likely religious values, one person that has religious values, it's not likely they will do self-experimentation a lot, because religious values, they are dogmatic and they don't want to be challenged. Like, it's not something religion do, challenge their values. So first of all, self-experimentation is kind of a procedure to challenge values. This is one thing. So, but it also, of course, assumes values. For example, evolution as a value um, enables self-experimentation, because when we test some experience, like some variable within the experience, it's all about evolution. Like, what works better in the evolution? What's the best way to evolve? So the values are directly connected to self-experimentation, because some values enable it and some values are obstacles to it. So it's they are very connected.
Okay, and then we have a couple of feedbacks here from Liliana. I think that from the previous question, and every person scientifically inclined needs to know rather than believe.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's the difference. We insist a lot here in conscientiology between knowledge and belief. Um, it's funny, or it's today, this is a difference that's being challenged culturally in our society. And it's we in conscientiology, more and more we are challenged, to sustain this difference, because for example, in the internet, everyone can show their opinions and so on, and sometimes they are valued as knowledge. That's what it's called, fake news, etc. So this difference between knowledge and belief, it's a very important point we make here in conscientiology, especially because we mean subjective experience. We mean, so I think our object and our methodologies, because of that, they tend to show more, I think, to appear more, because we are talking about something that's getting more and more, how can I say, an issue that's more and more present in our time. Our criteria to actually know something.
Interesting. And then another comment here, it was broken too, but I think that the core is here, mentioned here. Self-experience is broader, definitely. Self-experimentation is a totally different thing, of course.
Yes. Self-experience, brother. Good word, brother. Self-experience includes everything, but self-experimentation is focused. I want to experiment this. It's defined, so it's focused. Exactly.
And then we have here uh, Liliana. She's just saying thank you for your comments.
Thank you for the
Uh,
questions.
Liliana and Eliane here, the same. Thanks, Alexandre.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
And
Thank you for attending this.
a quick comment here, and a thank you from Lydia. Thanks, very good answers regarding extraphysical experimentation. This is a big challenge I'm starting to face now.
Yeah, yeah. In conscientiology, well, I remember Dr. Valdo. He was reassuring many times that what's more important is the content, not the form. The content of the phenomena, like what's the content? Um, what is important in this in order to bring more evolution? What's more really? What does it mean? That's the content. But when we study the method, it is form, is not the content, but the intention is to help to get better content. Let's say that, to the if we are more aware of our method, we can improve the quality of our content, I think. And also, if we consider our groupal, I think, task, the our existential program as a group, it involves the development of the science, the scientific aspect or features of conscientiology. So we need to talk about method, methodology, and so on, because we can talk about science and a scientific aspect of conscientiology without addressing that method and so on. But so that's the challenge. Talk about that.
And well, I think that we got to all the questions so far here, Alexandre. And then today, I think that who received a gift here, it was us with your lecture here. So we appreciate very much your sharing your research, your passion for the scientific method, and then providing these good ideas here. Okay, so that's wonderful. Okay, and then uh,
Thank you. Thanks a
and then
lot.
I think that Helen comments here, Helen Matos comments here. I think that it's a good closing here. This discussion has been very informative. Concepts we don't discuss so openly in English. Congratulations.
Great, great, good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank everybody that's joining us today, and we are coming back with another Bridge Researchers very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, just before I'm not going to close before putting Liliana again here. Experience is subjective, but many experience similar experience using specific techniques and self-inducing experimentation. That is very objective.
Yeah, that becomes more objective. That becomes more objective. But I'd say that self experimentation needs to be objective to oneself first, and only after that comparing similar self experimentation. But you're right, that's the goal. If all of us have our self experiments very well described, they can converge, they can flow into some objective knowledge. That's right, I agree.
And thank you again. Thank you, Liliana, for being with us. And again, Alexandre, I hope that we have you more times here with us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your research. And let's see again in another Bridge Researchers. Thank you all.
Thank you.